Hi, I'm Tiggle, and today we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about raiding as an Enhancement Shaman going into Dragonflight 10.2, Guardians of the Dream. In this video, we'll be going over what you should have done before the raid comes out, which consumables and enchants we'll be using next season. We'll cover most of the major changes for Enhancement Shaman and how these changes will affect your rotation. And at the end, I'll give you a list of gear that you'll likely want to keep an eye out for, as well as the dungeons you'll be wanting to focus on for the best early upgrades. If you find any of the information in this video helpful and want to see it all done in practice, feel free to check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/TiggleBTW, where you'll find me and my guild Imperative pushing for top 10 in the upcoming Race to World First on November 14th. Before getting into any of the new stuff, let's talk about the two main things you should have done before the patch goes live. First, make sure you turn all of your aspect fragments into crest. These will be turning into gray items as soon as the patch hits and will no longer be able to be converted. This is more of a precautionary measure in case you want to move your embellishments around early on for short-term DPS gains. Speaking of embellishments, the two embellishments you'll be looking to wear in 10.2 are Spore Cloak and Adaptive Dracothist Arm Guards. Spore Cloak has been updated for 10.2 and will now provide versatility and a passive heal while above 70% HP, making it one of the best offensive and defensive options. On top of both of these embellishments being very strong, they also have the added benefit of being in the lower stat budgeted item slots, making them very efficient crafts. This is perfect for us in 10.2, where crafted pieces have a max eye level 3 levels lower than fully upgraded mythic items. Leading up to 10.2, I'd also highly recommend having your alchemy leveled to 75, as well as having at least 80 knowledge points to spend in a few beneficial areas. To spend your knowledge points, you'll want to put 10 points in potion mastery, 15 points in frost formulated potions, 20 points in philo mastery, 5 points in alchemical theory, and lastly 30 points in decaology. By doing all of this, you'll have an extra heal over time after using any Dragon Isles potion, increase your file duration from 30 minutes to 90 minutes, and reduce all damage taken from toxic potions and files by 50%. While we're on the topic of potions and files, let's talk about all the consumables, gems, and enchants we'll be using in patch 10.2. For consumables, we'll be using Deviously Deviled Eggs as our personal food. These are a little bit better than the Fated Fortune cookies, but only because you can actually re-eat them in Mythic Plus if you die. Your file of choice is going to be File of Corrupting Rage or File of Tepid Versatility, depending on if we need more damage or survivability. For health potions, you have two new options, Potion of Withering Dreams and Dreamwalker's Healing Potion. The Potion of Withering Dreams gives you a large heal for most of your health bar, but afterwards will slowly damage you for a large portion of the amount healed. The Dreamwalker's Healing Potion is a much smaller immediate heal, but afterwards it'll heal you for the same amount over the course of 6 seconds. Which one of these you choose will be pretty situation dependent, and it's probably not a bad idea to have a stack of both of these on you just in case. And don't forget, if you leveled your alchemy and spent your points correctly, the damage taken from the Potion of Withering Dreams and File of Corrupting Rage will be reduced by 50%. Lastly, we're still going to be using the Elemental Potion of Ultimate Power as our primary stat combat potion. For enchants and gems, I'd highly recommend simming your character to decide what's best for you at the time, but here's a list of all the best options for you to choose from. The two biggest changes with our enchants in 10.2 are the addition of a new head enchant, Incandescent Essence, which is basically just a passive damage proc, but this will only be available after completing a quest chain 5 to 6 weeks into the new patch. The other big change is that we may actually be running Wafting Devotion on 1 or 2 of our weapons. This is pretty single target focused though, and really only comes into play if you manage to get your hands on the Cataclysmic Signet brand, as this scales extremely well with haste. Now that all the prep work is out of the way, let's get into some of the major class-specific changes with Enhancement Shaman that are really going to change the play and feel of the spec in 10.2. I want to preface this by saying I'm extremely excited for these changes, guys, and I'm going to go as far as to say Enhance in 10.2 is going to be the most enjoyable the spec has ever and will ever be in the existence of the game. So if you've ever considered trying this spec in the past but got cold feet, I definitely recommend diving in headfirst now before it's too late. The first major change we're going to cover is the talent tree rework. Many of the talents were shuffled around, freeing up a couple talent points, allowing us to be much more flexible in certain builds. Elemental Blast, Sundering, Storm Blast, Feral Lunge, and Wind Fury Totem all had their locations changed, and the biggest of these is Elemental Blast being much easier to get for Elements build, as we no longer have to feel like we're wasting 2 points on Sundering and Storm's Wrath to get to it. Elemental Blast was also turned into a choice node with a new talent, Tempest Strikes, which is basically just a passive damage proc on Storm Strike, Ice Strike, and Lava Lash. But this is really only going to be played in Storm build, as it really plays around Storm's desire to press Storm Strike, as well as enabling static accumulation by allowing you to only press Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning as your spenders. Probably the biggest change in our talent tree is the rework of Elemental Assault. Now not only Storm Strike, but Ice Strike and Lava Lash will also have a 100% chance to generate Maelstrom Weapon, assuming you allocate 2 talent points into it. This change alone drastically changes the feel of Elements build, and is where most of my enjoyment comes from. It changes Elements build from being very resource starved and a bit RNG at times, especially in the opener, to being much more consistent and rewarding to play. Another important talent change is the tuning of Splintered Elements. They've made it to where you get 20% haste baseline from consuming Primordial Wave, and an additional 4% per target affected by your Flame Shock, up to a maximum of 40%. If you've played Enhance in the past, this may sound like a bad change at first, because we're going to be getting much less haste in AoE, but the increased haste in single target and our new tier set that we'll talk about later more than makes up for this. Another change I briefly want to go over is that Legacy of the Frost Witch now increases both physical and frost damage by up to 25%. I don't expect this to be played in Raid, but it does open up a new Mythic Plus talent build that I think a lot of you are really going to enjoy, but that's a topic for another video. Finally, let's talk about our 10.2 tier set. This thing is kinda nuts for both single target and AoE, and it honestly may be the strongest tier set Enhance has ever had. Our 2-piece causes Primordial Wave to summon a Lightning Feral Spirit that increases our nature damage dealt by 20% for 15 seconds. This is at the moment bugged on PTR, to where this wolf will sometimes pull mobs that you're not in combat with, but surely Blizzard will fix this before the patch goes live. Then our 4-piece makes it to where when we summon a Feral Spirit, each wolf reduces the cooldown of Primordial Wave by 7 seconds, and yes, the wolf summoned by our 2-piece counts towards this, which essentially just makes Primordial Wave a 38-second cooldown baseline, reduced by 14 seconds each time we cast Feral Spirits. This tier set, along with the Elemental Assault talent change, greatly increases our uptime of Feral Spirits and Elements build, going from about 55% in 10.1 to upwards of 90% or more in 10.2. It also allows us to have a much more diverse damage profile, as we get to choose if we want to reduce the cooldown of Wolves, or if we want to reduce the cooldown of Primordial Wave to better line up with spawning adds. This on-the-fly decision making is going to make Enhancement Shaman a real treat to play in Dragonflight Season 3, and I couldn't be more excited about it. Now that we've talked about all the new changes coming in patch 10.2, let's go over how all of those changes are going to affect you and your rotation. I'm sure a lot of you are hearing all of this talk about Primordial Wave and Elements build, and you're kind of asking yourself, is Storm dead? Well, kinda. Storm is still going to be a perfectly viable option for those of you that really enjoy it, and it may even hold some top spots on logs for certain bosses, but it does currently lose out the Elements build in Sims for single target, AoE, cleave, and funnel, making Elements just a much more desirable build to play if you truly care about optimizing your damage. Because of this, Elements build is going to be the build we focus on today, and this is the talent page we'll be running on most, if not all of the bosses in the new raid. And if you're new to Elements build, I just want to warn you by saying it's a bit more complex than the Storm build that we ran in the previous year, but if you follow this priority list, you'll be slamming in no time. Feral Spirits or Primordial Wave, Flame Shock if it's not applied, Elemental Blast at 5 or more Maelstrom and 4 Feral Spirits active, Lava Lash if Hot Hands is active, Wind Fury Totem if it's not applied, Elemental Blast at 5 or more Maelstrom and 2 charges of Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt at 8 or more Maelstrom and Primordial Wave buff is active, Elemental Blast at 8 or more Maelstrom and Feral Spirits is active, Lightning Bolt at 8 or more Maelstrom, Lava Lash, Ice Strike if the buff is not already active, Frost Shock with Hailstorm, Ice Strike even though the buff is already active, Storm Strike, Sundering, Lightning Bolt at 5 or more Maelstrom, Frost Shock without Hailstorm, Flame Shock even though it's already applied, or Refresh Wind Fury Totem. Now I know a lot of you are probably looking at this 20 item list and find it to be very daunting, but trust me, it's not nearly as bad as it looks. To simplify it, let's break everything down into 5 different categories: maintenance abilities, cooldowns, generators, spenders, and fillers. With everything separated, I like to think of it like this. Maintenance abilities, so your Flame Shock and your Wind Fury Totem, are buttons you should maintain as close to 100% uptime as possible, so if they aren't active, press them. Cooldowns, like your Feral Spirits and Primordial Wave, are called cooldowns for a reason. Try to keep them on cooldown at all times, so if they are available to be pressed, they should be pressed. Generators, so your Lava Lash, Ice Strike, Frost Shock with Hailstorm, and Storm Strike, are the bread and butter of the spec and should be the main thing you're thinking about. Everything else mentioned previously, for the most part, can just be maintained or set on CD without a second thought. Your generators, though, you want to try to think of these as like a checklist. You want to start at the top, work your way down, and check off each item on the list whenever it becomes available. You just want to remember that this list is always updating, and even if you don't make it to the bottom of the list, something at the top could become available again, in which case you'd want to stop what you're doing and move back up to the top of the list and start the process all over again. Then you have your spenders, Elemental Blast and Lightning Bolt. These 2 abilities are the main things that are going to be breaking you away from your checklist, but once you get used to them, you'll be able to jump right back in wherever you left off. For the most part, you don't think about these unless you have 8 or more Maelstrom, and which one you press is determined by a few things. If you have 2 charges of Elemental Blast, you'll cast Elemental Blast. If you have the Primordial Wave buff and only 1 charge of Elemental Blast, you're going to press Lightning Bolt. If your Feral Spirits is active and you don't have the Primordial Wave buff, you'll cast Elemental Blast. And if none of the stuff listed previously is true, then you're casting Lightning Bolt. Lastly, you have your fillers: Sundering, Frost Shock without Hailstorm, and Flame Shock. These aren't really worth putting any brain power towards, as it doesn't really matter which order you press these in, and if you get to this point, you're basically just wanting to press something because it's better than pressing nothing. And that pretty much covers the Enhancement Shaman rotation in patch 10.2. Maintain uptime on your maintenance abilities, keep your cooldowns on cooldown, work your way through your generator checklist and only leave it whenever you reach 8 Maelstrom, spend on Elemental Blast at 2 charges or whenever Wolves are active, otherwise Lightning Bolt, and press one of your fillers if no generators or spenders are available. Before moving on, I do want to touch on a few questions that I get asked all the time. Should you prioritize Feral Spirits or Primordial Wave? Unless you're trying to line your Primordial Wave up with a spawn of ads, you don't really care which of these gets its cooldown reduced, so just send them both on CD, regardless if one only has a few seconds of cooldown remaining or not. In the opener though, I do tend to send Wolves first, but this is only to try to get a big 4-Wolf Ellie Blast in the opener, and regardless if you send Primordial Wave or Wolves first, your second Primordial Wave will be coming up at about the same time. Are you supposed to spam Lava Lash during Hot Hands? In most cases during Hot Hands, you'll be weaving other abilities in between Lava Lash. For example, it'd be like Lava Lash, another ability, Lava Lash, another ability, Lava Lash. The only time you will spam it like Lava Lash, Lava Lash, Lava Lash is if you re-proc Hot Hands while you're already in it, or if you're at extremely high haste values, which rarely or never happens without a lot of externals. Do you only spend your Maelstrom whenever you get to 10? Absolutely not. Ideally, you want to spend around 7 to 8 to make sure you waste as a little Maelstrom as possible, but if you get to 5 and there's no other abilities to press, then just go ahead and send the Lightning Bolt. Do you only ever cast Frost Shock at 10 Hailstorm stacks and with Ice Strike? You want to press Frost Shock at 5 or more Hailstorm, and every other Frost Shock should be buffed by Ice Strike. The last thing we're going to cover in this video is all of the notable drops you should be keeping an eye out for throughout the course of the patch. Keep in mind this is not a best in slot list, but rather just a list of items that are well statted for Enhancement Shaman, and it's probably a safe bet to be using. You should always use raidbots.com as a way to simulate your character to find the best items for you. Crafted gear isn't going to be quite as strong as it was in the previous tier, because its max item level is capped at 486, compared to rated Mythic Plus gear that can be upgraded to 489. With that being said, you'll likely want to send your first spark on getting a 486 Haste Mastery weapon for the most short-term DPS gains early in the season, but I'd recommend killing the first few bosses on Heroic before committing to anything to be as efficient as possible with your sparks. Your next 2 sparks should be used to craft your embellishments at 486, and the rest of your sparks can be used to fill in low item level pieces along the way. Getting into the raid items, the first thing you're going to want to prioritize is getting your tier pieces from Agira, Laradar, Nimue, Smolderon, Tendril, and Fyrak. Because of the large item level jump from 10.1 to 10.2, it will be worth it to wear 2 pieces of the old tier and 2 pieces of the new tier until you get your hands on the full set. Keep in mind that the Revival Catalyst will be open week 1 this time around, but it's a smart idea to wait until after opening your first Great Vault before spending your first charge to reduce the chance of getting any duplicate tier pieces. You'll also get a one-time token for completing the achievement Dragonflight Season 3 Master that can be redeemed to get any heroic tier piece of your choice. Outside of tier, you'll also want to keep an eye out for the following items: Agira's Flaying Hatchet from Agira the Cruel, Thorncollar Claw, Pip's Emerald Friendship Badge, and Erwin's Ritual Sarong from Council of Dreams, Band of Burning Thorns from Laradar, Keeper of the Flame, Cataclysmic Signet Brand from Smolderon, and Eye of the Rising Flame from Tendril Sageswift, Seer of the Flame. It is worth pointing out that Thorncollar Claw is a very good single target option but loses out to other weapons when other targets are involved, and Erwin's Ritual Sarong will only be used as a tier off piece if you happen to get your tier from your other slots. Now let's take a look at some of the dungeons you'll want to prioritize your time in if you're looking for solid upgrades early on. Dawn of the Infinites, Galakrion's Fall for accelerating Sandglass. Dawn of the Infinites, Morazan's Rise for reality warping Waistband, Grunt's Eternal Treads, and Mirror of Fractured Tomorrows. Darkheart Thicket for Gloves of Wretched Legions as a tier off piece, Archdruid's Tainted Seal, and Whelp Handler's Lined Boots. Atal Dazar for Soul Rending Claw and Midas Talisman, Throne of Tides for Porcelain Crab, and the Everbloom for Witherbark's Branch. And there you have it, guys. That's everything you need to know about raiding as an Enhancement Shaman going into Dragonflight 10.2. I hope you're all as excited as I am about the state of Enhance moving forward. I think Blizzard has done an amazing job giving Enhance the love it's needed for a while now, and has been very careful not to disrupt the flow and feel of the class in all the tuning patches thus far. I have heard some rumors going around that Enhance may be getting turned into a support spec like Augmentation Evoker, and Blizzard, if you're listening, please do not do this. You guys have put a lot of work getting Enhanced to the point that it is now, and I would hate to see all of that work be thrown out the window, along with everything that makes the spec so enjoyable to play for thousands of people like me. I hope some new faces can use this video as a way to dip their toes into Enhanced and experience why it is I love this spec so much. And as always, guys, I hope you all have a blessed and wonderful morning, afternoon, and good night wherever you're in the world. Take care. Bye forever.